All right. What's up, everybody? It's Pikel with League of Items, and I want to go through some positional rankings before the season's completely underway. Um, the point of something like this is just to give people kind of a relative understanding of how good players are compared to one another, and how strong I think they are compared to other regions and stuff like that. Because I know after recording some of the videos that I just recorded the other day, I think that it would be kind of unfair if I didn't make this kind of video, because when I say someone's overrated, a lot of the time I'm talking about from like their ranking in the world, not necessarily their ranking in their region, because I don't really care about their regions. I I care about worlds. So we're going to start in the LPL, and we're going to work all the way down to the LCS. I'm sure there are players in other regions that like have chances of breaking into these kinds of lists, but I don't know enough about them to include them in something like this. So I'm going to go through the different regions starting in the LPL, and first I'm going to try to explain the core of the criteria. Obviously, I can go against this, and I'm going to like highlight different players that I think are worth mentioning. But this is basically what I'm going for. So an elite player is someone who is meta resilient, meta defining, or a world class player. So what do these things mean? Meta resilient means that regardless of the meta that they find themselves in, if it's a tank meta, carry meta, whatever it is, they are going to be one of the best players in their region or in the world. Meta defining means that these are the kinds of players who other players will look to figure out what champions are strong, which champions are weak, what's a good counter matchup, those kinds of things. Now, just because they're an elite player doesn't mean other players are following their lead, but a lot of the time, good players will emulate good players and kind of pick up tips from them, not even necessarily from talking to them, but watching them. And then last is world class. So this player, either currently or in the past, has been considered world class, where they are one of, if not the best player in their role. And I think talent sticks. So if you have the upside of being the best player in the world or the best top laner in your region, you're not going to go far away from that. Like, you might have slumps, you might be on a bad team, but if everything else was equal, you'd be able to beat like your opponent more often than not. So first we're going to do the top lane, and you'll notice this pretty quick, but I didn't put any players below average. I think that some of these players are below average, but it would have just taken so much more time. And as the season goes on, I'm going to try to make changes to this list and keep notes and those kinds of things, so I kind of have a better understanding of where I stand on players as the year goes on. So first up in the top lane, we have Nogri, Bin, The Shy, Zoom, and 369. And I think that these are all elite players. So first, we can start with Nogri. Nogri is a true carry player, but in the sense that they will carry their team sometimes without playing true carry champions. So the one champion that comes to mind for Nogri is Kennen, because there were points during last year where Nogri would have a perfect TP flank, or not even a TP flank, just a regular flank, and would win a team fight for their team. Nogri is also the kind of player who can lose very hard, but that's the risk you take as a team when you have a player of their caliber, because they can win you the game, but if they see a play that will win the game and it fails, then you're going to have a tough time winning the game. So it's a double-edged sword, and you kind of just have to deal with it. In the long run, it's going to be better to have that kind of player on your team. Bin exploded onto the scene last year, a very young player, and Bin is amazing. So Bin is really a Camille player in solo queue. I'm pretty sure that's how they were discovered. And they played today. They played Camille today against Top Esports and had a ridiculous game. And it takes a lot for a professional player to completely stomp another very good player. And that player was 369, who I think is also elite. Maybe borderline, they should be above average instead of elite, but some of the performances that you see from 369 is very good, which is why I left him here. But Bin, I think is definitely one of, if not the best top laner in the world. I think there's a good argument to be made that Bin is currently the best top laner in the world, but it's tough to make that argument without Bin going up against Zoom and Nogri. It also depends on the meta. So the meta can like help you pick between players in the same tier, or maybe it moves a player from above average to elite or vice versa, like in terms of who they're able to beat. But just in terms of talent, I think that Bin deserves to be considered an elite player. The Shy, some people are going to say this is just a legacy ranking because the Shy was the best player in the world when they won the world championship. Or it may have been Rookie, but I really do think that the Shy and Rookie were two of the best players in the world when they won that world championship, because the rest of their team really wasn't as talented. But that's just kind of who the Shy is. The Shy is like Nogri on steroids. The Shy can win a game harder than Nogri and can lose a game harder than Nogri. And they play fundamentally different champions. The Shy's champion pool is probably more difficult to pull off than Nogri's, because the way that they function in team fights is much different, and the Shy is more likely to split push than Nogri is. I think that's true. Maybe I'm wrong about that, but that's just the general feeling I get based on the champions they play. Next up is Zoom. Zoom is probably the best tank player in the world, has great synergy with Kanavi, who is an amazing player, and that's really what makes JDG an elite team. So there's not as much to say about Zoom, but when Zoom came into the roster last year after his coronavirus like quarantine, they just dominated everyone for a pretty long time. They ended up not doing very well at Worlds, but that was mostly due to the meta. So again, not just because they're elite doesn't mean they're always meta resilient or that they can play every single playstyle, but they do something that is elite, or they are just overall an elite player. So with Zoom, I would say the one knock on Zoom is that maybe they're not as hard of a carry as everyone else. Maybe Kanavi deserves a lot of the credit for Zoom's success, but still, I think most people will agree, especially when we're talking just about Chinese teams. Zoom is definitely elite in the LPL. Last up is 369. 369 had a pretty good season last year, and I know that they have a lot of talent on their team, but there were games where 369 was able to carry, which not everyone can handle that kind of responsibility. The other big thing is, as a top laner, is being able to help your team win from behind, because that's really difficult to do in general. So then let's go into the above average tier. So in the above average tier, I have Breathe, Flandre, Xiaohu, Ziv, and Nu. So Breathe was Curse. And Curse played really well last year. I think there's big upside for World Elite this year because their new roster is very strong. Somebody like Breathe really helps in that situation. Flandre, again, this could be considered kind of a legacy thing, but at their peak, Flandre was probably a top 3 top laner in the world. Another like risky playstyle kind of player. Won't necessarily start every single match this season, but the games that Flandre plays, they have a chance to take over the game, which is kind of unique for top laners. So that's why I have Flandre up here. Xiaohu is a converted mid laner. Xiaohu was once considered one of the up-and-coming stars in League of Legends, and it's very weird that they're making this switch, but I have no doubt that Xiaohu is mechanically strong enough to pull something like this off, and it might be the perfect time to do something like that, because the top lane meta is really interesting right now, with things like Camille, Aatrox being very strong, as well as champions like Jax, Gragas, just a lot of different kinds of champions that aren't necessarily tanks, but like are like a bruiser hybrid tank kind of thing. So I think that there's big upside. If Xiaohu's true strength is being able to outduel people in their lane, then top lane will be very good in the long run. It's a risk, but in reality, I think a lot of the above average and average players are kind of blended together. It's just that I have like gut feelings about these players that if they're going up against someone in the average tier, I'd probably pick them to win the matchup. Next up is Ziv. So Ziv is an older player, was on AHQ for a long time, and Ziv was like the focal point of that team. So Ziv was a very good player, and coming over to the LPL because AHQ disbanded, I think it's a good opportunity for Ziv to kind of prove that they are actually a good player, because when they would go to Worlds, they would often be very competitive. Not really championship contenders, but they would be very competitive. New is a good player as well. I think that New is going to surprise a lot of people this year. OMG played pretty well against EDG today, and some people might think that's just like a fluke, but from what I've seen of New has chances to carry games pretty hard as well. So I do like New. New has the chance to fall into the bottom tier. The one thing that I'd say about this is that I don't really see any of these players being elite, like the best top laner in the region. But I think Breathe, Flandre, I think Breathe and Xiaohu have chances to break into the elite tier and be like at the bottom of the elite tier. And then for average players, it's everybody else. I don't have strong opinions about any of these players. Maybe something will click and I remember something from last year when I'm going through like individual matchups or certain games. But for now, I'm just going to leave everyone else the same, and I'm not going to talk about any of them specifically because this is going to be a long video. All right, now we're going to the jungle. I think Kanavi is the best jungler in the LPL, and I think it's not really close. The only thing that's holding back Kanavi right now is the meta, and it's not to say that Kanavi couldn't play the meta better. It's just that there's only so much a jungler can do in a farming jungle meta to differentiate themselves from other junglers who are farming. If we see something like Nidalee, Graves, like these kinds of champions falling off a little bit because they nerfed the jungle in some way, I think Kanavi would instantly be the biggest difference maker in the jungle in the world. So that's kind of the ceiling they have. They have a higher ceiling, I think, than any other jungler in the world. So I have to leave Kanavi in a tier by themselves. In the above average tier, I have Beishang, Karsa, Tarzan, SFM, and Tian. And there's like some mobility in these rankings where like they can go above one of the players in their tier or below. It's just that these players have things about them where if they're going up against anybody below them, I would most likely just think that it's an advantage for the other team, or for their team against the other team. So Beishang for World Elite, I think Beishang is one of the more mechanically skilled junglers in the LPL right now, and Beishang's Echo is very strong. So I think if Echo is able to be played in professional, Beishang is going to have a huge leg up on the competition. It'll force a ban from the other teams. Echo is just a strong champion in general. They can flex it. Just an overall good player. Karsa, obviously, one of the best junglers around. I think that Karsa is fortunate that they've been on a lot of good teams because everyone trusts Karsa to play really well. They struggled for a while last season when Graves was like the best champion. They still managed to pull off a lot of wins with like Lee Sin, picking Lee Sin into Graves, but they eventually adapted and started picking up the Graves, and they're pretty good at it. So I think that Karsa is pretty adaptable, and that's a benefit. Tarzan. So Tarzan did not play professionally last year because of the whole situation. I don't know a lot of the specifics. I just know that they didn't play. The last time they played, they were considered the best jungler in the world. They were supposed to go to the LPL, I think. But maybe it was visa issues. Maybe it was coronavirus. I'm not sure what it was. But Tarzan just didn't play last year. SFM. I love SFM. I think that he's a lot of fun to watch. Big upside, unique champion pool. Not unique champion pool. A lot of people play the champions that he plays. But he's willing to play them in a professional match, which is different. So SFM is a good player, not as mechanically skilled as some of these other players, but has an incredible sense of the game, and is just a really good player. a lot of intangibles. It seems like that kind of situation. And then last is Tian. So Tian and FPX had a tough year last year. I think part of that had to do with the jungle meta, but Tian is a very good jungler. If any of the players in this tier were going to go down, I would say it's probably Tarzan, SFM, or Tian. They all have a chance to just be average players. I doubt it's going to be Tarzan. I think Tarzan has a higher percent chance of being an elite player than an average player. But I haven't seen them play in over a year, so it's tough to say. I think Beishang has the chance to be elite. Karsa, some people will probably argue, is elite right now. So it's really Kanavi, Beishang, Karsa, Tarzan, but the above average players are closer to one another than they are to Kanavi, I think. And then in the above average tier, or the average tier, I have Jai, Meteor, Hacker. And I think these three players are pretty good. They're noteworthy players. I think that a lot of people know that I like Xiaolong Bao. I like Haro. And then I forget if it's Wei or Wei, but everybody's really, really high on one of them. I think it's Wei. But I don't like them as much as other people do. Maybe I'm wrong. Who knows? Let's go to the mid lane. So in the mid lane, we have Knight, Rookie, and Duanbi as the three elite players in the LPL. They are three of the best mid laners in the world. I don't think anyone would really argue with that. Knight has been kind of insane the past 2 years. Wasn't able to pull it all together during Worlds last year, but there's nothing really that we can do about that at this point. Like, I just expect Top Esports to be relatively dominant in the LPL. I know they lost to Sunning today. Sunning's a very good team. Jackie Love kind of threw. No, I don't want to blame Jackie Love for the loss, but Jackie Love did have some questionable decisions during the match. But Knight, obviously, no one's going to argue with me that Knight's an elite mid laner. Rookie was the best player in the world at one point, and is still like incredible. The level that Rookie can play Orianna at is higher than almost anybody else, I think, in the world. So that champion itself is meta resistant, which means that Rookie is definitely meta resistant. When that's a contested pick, you kind of always have to worry about it when you're playing against Rookie. Duanbi, I still think Duanbi is elite. They didn't have a great year last year. They played really well in points, but they weren't able to carry their team. There was just something going on with FPX. I don't really know what the issue was. Maybe it was Khan, and maybe Nagari fixes everything, but that seems kind of unlikely. In the above average tier, we have Xie, Zika, Scout, Yagao, and Angel. So I'm not a huge Yagao fan. I think Xie is better than Yagao. And I wasn't convinced by Yagao all of last season. They're a good Zoe player, I think, but that's kind of where my love for them kind of ends. I think that if you look at the other players in this tier, mostly Xie and Zika, I think they have much higher upside than Yagao. I think that Xie could be an elite player. I think that Zika will be an elite player. Scout is a very good player, surprisingly young because they've been around for a long time. And like Scout being on EDG this year with an improved roster, I think is going to be very good for them. And then Yagao is not even starting right now. I don't know how much time they're going to split. I don't really pay close attention to the news in like at a granular level where they may have said like, it's going to be a 50-50 split or something. I just don't know. And then Angel, I think Angel, the reason I put Angel here at above average is because Angel can win against the elite players that are here. It's not easy, but it's possible. And you can't really say that for everyone that's on this list. I'm not going to go through the average players. I don't really have any hot takes for any of those guys. The elite 80 carries right now. So I think Jackie Love and Huanfeng are the two elite 80 carries. I think there's a good argument to be made that Huanfeng is just better than Jackie Love outright. I think Viper has a chance to be an elite player. I think Aiming has a chance to be an elite player. LWX was an extremely good player during the... Well, actually, so I might just be wrong about LWX. I didn't have a good feel for them during the FPX run, but like the fact that Duanbi is such like a supportive player, they put a lot on LWX's plate, and LWX is able to convert those wins. So it is pretty impressive. And like FPX didn't play as well as everyone thought they would last year, but they still played pretty well compared to most teams. Loken, I think Loken is better relative to the other players at 80 carry than Yagao is to the other mid laners. So I'm not surprised that Loken kept their spot while Yagao lost their spot. Betty and iBoy, these are kind of just like gut feelings. I feel like they're probably better than the rest of the 80 carries that are in the LPL, but if Betty and iBoy fell into the average tier, I wouldn't be surprised. And then everyone else in that tier, there are a few of them that I would say are probably below average, but I'm just going to let the season kind of play out and move people from here. Just give everyone the chance to start the season strong. Y4 in particular is somebody that I have my eye on. I liked them a lot during the spring when they would like constantly change their roster and stuff like that on V5. And then last, supports. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on supports. I think there's only 3 real true difference makers at support in the LPL right now, and that's Lumao, PP God, and Mako. I think I almost put Xiaohu on here, but I don't really care. I don't really care about support. It's really tough to separate a support from the game state. Like, if you're winning, you're going to look good. If you're losing, you're going to look bad because you have to make some risky choices and decisions. That's basically it. So let's go to LCK. In the LCK, there are less teams, so this should go a little faster. Again, I'm only going to talk about the elite and above average players. I might talk about some of the average players, but not all of them. So the elite top laners, I think Khan and Kana are the 2 elite top laners in the LCK right now. A lot of people probably don't want to think that Khan is going to be able to reestablish themselves as one of the best top laners in the world. But even on FPX, Khan had spots where they looked like a very, very, very good top laner. And they are able to carry games in ways that other players aren't. So Dom1 Gaming will not be the same as they were last year. They will be a little bit different. They still run the risk of their top laner feeding because Nagri, that was always a possibility. But it'll be somewhat like that. So I'm excited to watch Khan play with Dom1 Gaming. I think it'll be a side grade, but we'll have to wait and see. Kana on T1. Kana had an incredible year last year. It's possible that they're not as good as they were last year. They regress some, but even in that situation, I think worst case scenario, they're going to be an above average top laner. And then for my above average top laners, I think that Morgan is a very, very good top laner. It was tough in the LPL because there are a lot of pretty good top laners in the LPL, and it wasn't a meta where the top laner could really exert themselves. This seems like a good meta for Morgan, though, so I'm fine leaving them in the above average tier. And then I think Rich is someone who is going to have an incredible season, specifically in the spring until Aatrox gets nerfed. So Rich, everybody knows at this point that Rich was like the best player in Heroes of the Storm, and Aatrox was like his one-trick champion to learn how to play League of Legends, and Aatrox is extremely powerful right now, so I think every single team is probably going to ban it against them. If their champion pool is shallow, they're going to look bad, but every time they get Aatrox, I expect their team to win the game. And I like his team this split. And then in terms of the other top laners, Summit's a good player, Rascal's a good player, Dorn's a good player. It was really tough to separate Morgan and Rich from the rest of them at the average level, but I wanted to talk about them, and I do think they have like elite upside, where I'm not as convinced that the rest of them can like sustain an elite level. But like Rich, even though we haven't seen him be an elite League of Legends player, the fact that Aatrox is very powerful and they were the best player in Heroes of the Storm, I think it's possible that Rich could just be like that good at video games, which sounds kind of funny, but it's true. In the jungle, we have Canyon, Piosic, and Peanut. I think that they're much better. Well, they're much better than what we know about the other junglers. Some people are saying that some of the young junglers are going to be very good this year. I don't know that, so I can't really do anything with that. Clid, obviously, you can argue that Clid is above average. He should probably be in the above average tier, but we'll just see how that goes. Genji was disappointing overall last year. I don't really have anything to say about the other junglers. There are interesting junglers. I do like some of them, but I think Canyon, Piosic, and Peanut are better, just much better than everyone besides Clid. Let's go to mid lane. So in the mid lane, there are really 5 mid laners that I think are very strong and would start on almost any team. Showmaker, BDD, Chovy, Closer, and Faker. The only ones that people would maybe have a problem with on this list are Closer and Faker being elite since they're on the same team. But Faker is probably the best player of all time still. In my opinion, he's the best player of all time. And then Closer is an incredibly talented young player. So I think if Faker wasn't on T1, Closer would be the starter and nobody would question how good Closer is. So I'm willing to leave up Closer and Faker. But again, these players are all extremely good. The rest of the mid laners, I don't see the huge upside from any of them. They will look good at times, but they're the kinds of players that I consider meta dependent. Where if it's a very good meta where one of their pocket champions is like the best champion, then they're going to look very good. But they also have periods of time where they look very bad, or average. In the AD carry position, we have Ruler and Teddy. I think they're definitely the 2 best AD carries in Korea right now. Ghost and Deft are also very good players, but I think there is a substantial difference between Ruler and Teddy in terms of consistency and like ceiling upside. I do like Bang. I think that Bang at their peak was probably one of the best AD carries in the world as well. But that would be kind of that would be a legacy thing. Like I'm not willing to admit that on the Shy, but for Bang it would be, because Bang didn't really exert dominance in the LCS. I think a lot of it had to do with their team not being great, and they didn't seem motivated consistently. And then for support, the only 3 supports that I think are noteworthy at this point in the LCK are Keria, Beryl, Lehens, and maybe Effort, but we haven't seen Effort do it for any team besides T1. So Keria, I think, is the best support in the world. I think it's pretty clear. The carry upside that they have is tremendous and unique. So I think with Keria on T1, I think they're going to have an incredible year. It'll be tough to beat Damwon Gaming consistently, and there are other teams to consider in the LCK that might be surprisingly good. But for right now, I think easily Keria is the best. Beryl has a great champion pool, has great initiative, just a very good player. And then Lehens, when Viper and Lehens were at the top of their game, they were one of the best bot lanes in the world. So again, maybe I'm just letting history kind of distort what I think of them, but I think Lehens still has the very high upside. And that's also why I think that Lehens and Bang will do pretty well. The issue is maybe it's just name recognition and they'll fall on their faces, but I think they're pretty good. Let's go to the LEC. So in the LEC, in the top lane, Bwipo and Wonder are the 2 best players by far. I think that Broken Blade has a chance to be a top laner in the LEC. I also think Armut has a chance to be a very good top laner in the LEC. Aduamne is the wily veteran. He is meta resilient. He is a leader and just a very good player. White Knight cries aggressivo. Gen X, Shigenda, Hyrit. I don't know enough about these players to think that they're going to be substantially better than the players I have listed above them. I mean, I know Shigenda was very good during the EU Masters, but I have to see it in the LEC first. In the jungle, I think Selfmade and Inspired are better than Jankos at this point. I love Jankos. In a non-farm jungle meta, Jankos has a chance to be elite, but Jankos even kind of realizes that they're declining, and they talk about it somewhat often. So it's kind of troll, but it's just that's the truth. I can't rank Jankos above Selfmade or with Selfmade. Inspired and Jankos might be closer than it looks based on this list, but that's just kind of my feeling on it. I think Tinks has a chance to be very good. Elyoya does have a chance to be very good, but I still think that the move from Shadow to Elyoya was stupid. If Shadow was still in the league, I would have Shadow as an above average player, because I genuinely believe that. It's really bizarre what happened with them. In the mid lane, we have Caps. Caps is real good. And Caps is significantly better than any other player in the LEC, really. Above average players, Humanoid, Larson, and Niski. I would love to put Niski at just average because I do think that they are a league average player, but everyone would crush me for that. And, I'm willing to kind of admit that I am biased against Niski. Abadage, people like Abadage a lot. He has a chance to be above average. Chekolad had a good year last year. Malitza had a good year last year. Viteo had a good year last year. I don't know much about Blue, and Nuke Duck is bad, so I'm willing to put Nuke Duck at below average. 80 carries, or bot laners, whatever you want to call them. Reckless is the best, I think, still. Karzi has the highest upside probably right now, and Hansama, I love his play style. So those are the three standouts for me. People will say Upset should be above average. That's fair. I don't really care. I think Kabe also has really good chances to be above average. But there's something about Kabe I just don't like. Like, he just seems like he has an attitude. Maybe I'm reading too much into that. And then for supports, I think Mickey is the only elite support in the LEC right now. No one else worth talking about for sure. And then we go to the LCS. The LCS is just not very good. A lot of these players are not very good. But they're also not significantly better or worse than their counterparts. So for the top lane's interesting. I think we have some good names, some good players. Huni, Licorice, Someday, Fudge, Alfari, Impact, and even Fake God. I think Fake God has a chance to be really good this year. Finn I don't like Finn at all. I think Finn's bad. I was shocked when CLG bought out their contract. Niles and Revenge, they're college players, so I cannot think that they're going to be elite players or above average players in the LCS. That'd be shocking to me. But maybe it's true. Maybe they actually have that big upside. In the jungle, Blabber, Closer, Spica, Santorin. I think those are definitely the four best junglers in the league. Some people will want to say Broxa's up there. Maybe. Some people want to say Xerxes up there. I think Xerxes has a chance to be up there. There is some mobility between the above average and average tiers. I wouldn't be shocked if Xerxes was like an above average player for the entire year. But they're not going to be Blabber for the entire year. That'd be shocking to me. Jose Diodo, I think I would like it if they had like elite upside, but I just don't know enough about the player, and I think that everyone who says they do know the player, they're kind of kidding themselves. In the mid lane, Perks is probably the best player in the league at this point, just instantly, because Perks was one of the best players in the world regardless. I really hope that Perks has a big rebound from last year, because last year, between the fact that his father passed away and just a down year overall, it would be kind of horrible if that derailed his career, like from being a super competitive player, an elite player worldwide, which he currently is. Above average, Power Evil and Jensen. I think they're both above average mid laners. I think Power Evil is better than Jensen. I think Jensen could be average at this point, but I'll give him the benefit of the doubt. The rest of the mid laners, I don't have any interest in at all. If they were at an international tournament, I would assume they're going to be worse than their opponent in almost every matchup. For 80 carry, we have Sven, Tactical, and FBI. Those are the only 80 carries worth talking about, in my opinion. Some people will want to talk about Lost. I don't think Lost has proven anything yet. Reyes, I don't think has proven anything. I honestly don't even think Tactical or FBI is... I don't think they're special. Like, I don't think there's anything about them that we've seen is special outside of some flashy plays. Tactical had the highlight at Worlds. I understand that. Tactical won me a lot of money. I understand that. But compared to a lot of the 80 carries around the world, I just don't see it. They benefit a lot from playing in the LCS. And then for supports, I think that the LCS does have legitimate supports that could play anywhere. And that's because a lot of them have played in multiple regions. So Ignar was very good at Worlds, was very good in LEC, was very good in the LCS. Core JJ, same thing, world champion. Vulcan has only played in the LCS, but I think Vulcan could play maybe in any region, maybe even the LPL, and be above average. And then Sword Art. Sword Art is historically one of the better supports. I'm not sure how much longer that's going to last. I think that it'll be tough to translate that success into the LCS because of potential language issues and stuff like that. I think it was just kind of like a cash grab plus a clout grab for TSM. So I hope I'm wrong. I like Sword Art. I want Sword Art to do well. It seems unlikely for me. And then let's go into the last part of this for the combined region tiers. So what I tried to do here was kind of clump players together based on whether or not I think they are actually elite compared to the other regions, and just get kind of an understanding of where these players are relative to one another. So I think that, like I said in the LPL part of this video, I think Noguri, Bin, and Zoom are most likely the 3 best top laners in the world for various reasons. I think that the players in the above average tier have a chance to be elite. The Shy has been elite before. 369 has shown glimpses of being elite. Khan has been elite before. Kana was the best, first or second best top laner in the LCK last year, which says a lot. And Bwipo and Wonder, I just think at this point they have so much Worlds experience. They've done so well in their region for so long. They have a type of self-belief that you get when you win that much. And they have great champion pools. They're very flexible. They always do what the team needs them to do. More so than you see in a lot of other regions. Their champion pools are more diverse than a lot of other top laners around the world. And that flexibility is something that you can't really look over. And then I really do think Rich and Morgan both have chances to be above average players relative to every other top laner in the world. So that's kind of where I have everyone. Everyone that I didn't list is basically below average in this clump of players. And some of them have been very good at points in time. But for right now, I just don't see them kind of getting to that next level. Some people probably would want to say Huni, Licorice Fudge, Alfari for various reasons. But I've never been a huge fan of Alfari. I think Alfari is overrated. And this is what I mean when I say overrated. Like, I would say that these players are pretty similar. Like, if Alfari went up against Nu, I wouldn't think to myself, oh my god, Alfari is so much better than Nu. I would think everyone's going to say that, but in reality, it'll probably go even. In the jungle, the jungle's weird for me because last year was so insane from a jungle perspective. It was a kind of meta that we'd never seen before. And it seems like it might be the same way for the beginning of this season, but I don't expect it to stay that way for the entire season. So with that being said, I think Kanavi is the only true elite jungler in the world. Canyon played very well last year. I'm not trying to take anything away from Canyon, but everybody that's in the above average tier, I think it's really difficult to separate them because you have players like Karsa who were extremely good in the previous meta. For the years before that, you have players like Peanut, same thing, and then you have other types of players and Tarzan, and then you have other players who showed that they were extremely good at the carry meta from last year, but how much of that is going to translate into future success, and that's kind of my the reason why I'm kind of reluctant to put any of those players at the elite level. And I mean, I don't even think I'd really consider all these players above average or average relative to one another. Some of these guys will be below average, and I think if we see a meta shift, this list will kind of change a lot. But we'll have to wait and see about that. In the mid lane, Knight, Rookie, Doinb, Caps, Perks, Showmaker, BDD, and Chovy. I think all of those players are undoubtedly elite, and when they go up against one another, you can't say for sure that the one side is going to win over the other side. I think Xie and Zika both have chances to be in that elite level. I think Closer has a chance to be in that elite level. And Faker has been elite for their entire career. I would still put them up there, but I understand why I should probably list Closer and Faker together in the above average tier. That's basically it. For 80 carries, we have Huanfeng, Viper, Ruler, and Teddy. I think the LCK 80 carries have just been better for a while. That's really how they play League of Legends, is through their AD carries. T1 is often the exception because Faker was just so much better than every other mid laner, but now it's kind of changing. Like everyone else was playing this certain kind of meta. T1 played through the mid lane a lot of the time, and like the double Triforce, AD carry plus a mid laner, when like Bang was extremely good. But it's really like an AD carried league because they're all going to try to get into that macro portion of the game where there's these gigantic team fights, and it just makes the AD carries look very good. But it's not just they look good, it's that it's one of the best play styles to have, and they're the best players at that type of play style. So you have to have them as elite. And Huan Feng is an atypical Chinese AD carry in that sense. Aiming, I think, has a chance to be elite. Loken has a chance to be elite. Jackie Love has a chance to be elite, because most people will say that Jackie Love is elite. But Jackie Love, I'd rather have Huan Feng, Viper, Ruler, or Teddy than Jackie Love. And it might just be a playstyle thing. Like I said, I like Jackie Love's playstyle, but I just don't think that I can consider them the best like other people do. Like, I get it, they won a world championship, but it was because of the Shy and Rookie. So I can't shake that opinion at this point. Deft, I think, was the best AD carry for a long time, but last year was pretty horrible, so let's see if they can regain that status. Reckless, very good player. I don't think he's an elite player in the world. Karzi, I think, is very good, has a chance to move up in this list in the future. Hansama is someone who's very good right now, but not necessarily going to be an above average or elite player at any point. And then Sven Tactical and FBI, all kind of the same thing. Like, I think they do deserve to be on this list, but I think there are players from the LCK and LPL that are better than a lot of the players on this list. It's just that this is like, they were elite in their region, so I had to put them onto this portion of the list. It's tough to express your individuality as an AD carry. I get that, but I can't do anything about that. Like, you see somebody like Ruler or Viper, Huan Feng, Teddy, like, maybe not Teddy as much, but these three for sure. I'm 100% positive about that. Maybe Teddy and Jackie Love should be like separate underneath those guys, but they're all very good. A lot of very good players on that list. I'm not trying to say any of these players suck. It's just relative to the other players, I like other players more. And then for support, I think Keria is the best support in the world. I think Keria is probably a top 5 player in the world. Maybe that's just completely wrong and last year was a fluke, but I don't think so. I think Keria is absolutely insane and will give T1 a legitimate chance at dethroning Dom1 Gaming. And then Lumao, PP God, Mako, Beryl, Lehens, Mickey X, Ignar, Corjide, Vulcan, and Sword Art. I really do think these players are pretty similar to one another. I do think that there are a lot of LPL and LCK players that are roughly as good as these guys, so like just below them or maybe dispersed throughout them. But that's basically it. So these are really the elite players in my mind. These are the players that kind of dictate what is considered the best in the world. If they all showed up to an international tournament, I would expect almost all these guys to be in the top 20 list. How many players is this? Yeah, so 17 of the top 20. I would expect to include these players, assuming their teams made the tournament. And then you'd have like some players who were very good in this specific meta. You'd have some players who like were really good and then come back and like have a good year. Or you'll have some new faces that kind of shock everyone. But we don't know what that's going to be yet. So it's just a starting point. I'm not saying that these are the best players in the world and will be the best players in the world for the next 5 years. It's just right now, based on what I've seen and what I know about League of Legends, these are the players that I think are true difference makers. So Nogri, Zoom, Bin as top laners, I don't think anyone really disagrees with any one of those three being there. They've been incredible, especially last year. Kanavi, I think, is the best jungler in the world. I'll probably get some pushback for that in terms of like no other junglers being close, but that's the way I see it. I can't tell my eyes they're wrong. In the mid lane, Knight, Rookie, Doinby, Caps, Perks, Showmaker, BDD, Chovy. They're all very, 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 very good. And I'm often reluctant to put Caps and Perks in this kind of level, but it's tough to kind of argue against it at this point. Like, I do think that there is the upper echelon where, like, Knight is probably, and Showmaker are probably just better than everyone else in this, but, you know, there's a reason why these guys should be considered. So even if like they wouldn't be at the top of the top 20 list, they deserve to be in this group of players. Huanfeng, Viper, Ruler, and Teddy. I think these 4 players specifically are at the top of the bot laner ladder right now, in the top tier. Teddy, I could see arguments about. Viper, I could see arguments about. If you just told me it can only be Huanfeng, Ruler, and then you're crying at me about Jackie Love, like, I don't care enough to argue with you, but I just don't. There's something about Jackie Love that the way, even when his team is incredible, Jackie Love can make game-winning plays and game-losing plays. Huanfeng is just more consistent and explosive, and Huanfeng has that same impulse where they're willing to make an aggressive play, but it succeeds more often relative to expectations. So I just think that Huanfeng is better than Jackie Love right now. And then for support, I think Karia is by far the best support. So that's basically it. I know it's a pretty long video, 40-something minutes, but I think that there are some people out there who would appreciate this, and it's also just a good exercise for me to go through so that I kind of put my flag in the ground for the beginning of the season, and then we can see how this evolves through time. So, thanks for watching, and I'll talk to you later.